The kitchen was warm with afternoon light filtering through the cafe-style curtains. I'd come home early from the office, my shoulders still tight from the morning presentation. My wife Victoria didn't know I was home. She was laughing on the phone in the living room, the kind of unguarded laugh she saved for her best friend Emma. I set my keys down quietly, not wanting to interrupt her call, and was heading upstairs when her words stopped me cold. "Honestly, Em, if things ever fell apart with James, I don't think I'd marry again," Victoria said, her voice carrying that dreamy quality she got when she was being sincere. "I love him, truly I do, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just be myself. No compromises, no one else's schedule to consider. Just freedom." My chest tightened. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, one hand gripping the banister. My wife of 8 years, the woman who'd promised forever just as passionately as I had, was talking about wanting to be free of me. Of us. "I think a part of me would rather be alone than trapped," she continued, and I heard the honesty in every syllable. "The freedom to make decisions just for me, to wake up and choose my own path without considering someone else. God, Emma, that sounds so selfish, but I mean it." I climbed the stairs silently, my mind reeling. Victoria had always been independent. It was one of the things I'd fallen in love with, her fierce spirit, her refusal to be boxed in by expectations. But I'd always thought she'd chosen to build a life with me willingly. Had I been so focused on building something that I'd inadvertently built a cage instead? The past 6 months replayed in my mind, the small moments where she'd hesitated before canceling plans with friends because I had a work dinner. The way she'd apologized when she wanted to spend a weekend alone with a book. The time she'd ask if it was okay for her to take that promotion that required more travel, as if she needed my permission. I sat on the edge of our bed, running my hands through my hair. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. Instead, I felt a peculiar mix of sadness and clarity. My wife had been slowly shrinking her world to fit into mine, and I'd been too comfortable to notice, maybe too lazy, too assuming that her love meant she'd be happy sacrificing her independence. That night, when Victoria came to bed, she curled against me in the darkness, her head finding the familiar hollow of my shoulder. I kissed her forehead, and she smiled sleepily, never knowing I had heard the truth she couldn't tell me face to face. As she drifted off to sleep, I made a decision that would either save us or end us. The next morning, I woke before Victoria and made breakfast. Her favorite, actually, mushroom and Gruyere omelets with fresh croissants from the bakery down the street. I was plating everything when she appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in the old band t-shirt she wore as a nightshirt, her dark hair delightfully messy. "What's all this?" she asked, a smile already forming. "Can a man cook breakfast for his wife?" I replied, kissing her cheek as she sat down. We ate in comfortable silence, but my mind was already executing the plan that had taken shape overnight. I'd thought about it from every angle, examining my intentions like a jeweler inspecting a diamond for flaws. This couldn't be a trick or a punishment disguised as generosity. It had to be genuine. That afternoon, I took the afternoon off, something I rarely did. Victoria was surprised to find me waiting when she arrived home from her book club. "James, what's wrong? Are you sick?" "No," I said, taking her hand and leading her to the couch. "I want to talk about something important." Her eyes widened slightly. People rarely led with, "I want to talk," about good news, and I could see the worry lines appear between her eyebrows. "I've been thinking," I began carefully, "about us, about what makes us happy, and I realized I haven't been asking myself the right questions." Victoria's grip on my hand tightened. "What do you mean?" I said, meeting her eyes directly. "I mean that I want to propose something radical, something that might sound crazy, but I need you to really listen before you react." She nodded slowly, fear and curiosity mixing on her face. "I want you to experience your independence, real independence, not just the compromised version where you fit your dreams around mine." The confusion on her face deepened. "James, I don't understand. For the next 3 months, I think you should do whatever you want. Take a solo trip, spend weekends at the beach writing that novel you're always talking about.
Have girls' nights that turn into entire weekends. Book an Airbnb and work remotely from somewhere new. Go to that spiritual retreat you mentioned. I'm serious. Anything that makes you feel alive and free. But about us? We'll be fine, I interrupted gently. Better than fine. I'll be here, fully supporting this. I'll handle dinner, I'll give you space, I'll cheer you on. No guilt, no resentment. I want to see what happens when you're truly free to be yourself. Victoria pulled her hand away, and I felt panic spike through me. Had I miscalculated? Was this too much? Why would you do this? She whispered, tears suddenly glistening at the corners of her eyes. I took a breath. I couldn't tell her I had overheard her confession. That would undermine the gift I was offering. It would make it about my insecurity rather than her freedom. It's because I love you, I said simply. And I realized somewhere along the way, I might have been loving you in a way that was making you smaller. I don't want that. I want you to bloom, Victoria, even if that means you're blooming somewhere I'm not. She stared at me for a long moment, and then she was crying, pulling me into a tight embrace. I held her, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, unsure if she was crying because she was relieved, conflicted, or guilty. Maybe all three.
Victoria returned from Italy 3 days before she was supposed to. I was working from home when I heard the key in the lock, and my heart performed an acrobatic flip. Early return. What did that mean? She emerged through the door with 2 massive suitcases, her skin glowing with an Italian tan, her eyes bright with unshed tears, or perhaps joy. I couldn't immediately tell which. "Hi," she said simply. I stood up from my desk, suddenly uncertain. "Hi yourself. What are you doing home?" I cut it short, she said, wheeling her luggage inside and closing the door. I was in Rome and I realized something. My chest clenched. Here it was. The moment she was going to tell me that she'd realized she preferred being alone, that the freedom tasted too good to give up. I realized, she continued, stepping closer to me, that traveling alone was incredible, that I needed it, that I learned so much about myself. She paused, and a smile broke across her face. But I also realized that I don't want to experience every good thing in my life alone. I want someone to remember Rome with me. I want someone to share it with. "Victoria, let me finish," she interrupted. I met someone there, an artist from Barcelona. She was incredible, and we had the most interesting conversations about art and life and freedom. And I realized that maybe the freedom I thought I wanted wasn't freedom from you. It was freedom to be myself with you. She reached up and touched my face, her fingers gentle. I spent 10 days learning who I am when no one is watching. And you know what? I like her. I like who I am. And I like even more who I am when I'm with you, because you're not trying to change her. You're supporting her. I kissed her then, unable to wait for more words, my hands tangling in her hair, my body communicating what I couldn't articulate. She tasted like travel and possibility, and something fundamentally changed. We made our way upstairs without breaking contact, a trail of luggage and travel clothes left in our wake. We tumbled into our bed, and she made love to me with an urgency and passion that felt different, more deliberate, more chosen, more authentically her. Afterward, she told me stories about the museums and the midnight gelato runs, and the moment she sat alone by the Trevi fountain and realized that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. About how she'd journaled about our relationship and come to understand that she hadn't been shrinking to fit into my life. She'd been shrinking because she was afraid of being too much. I thought if I stayed small enough, I couldn't disappoint you. I thought if I didn't want too much or be too loud, you'd stay. But you just kept making space for me instead. That's what you do when you love someone. You make space. But you didn't just make space. You insisted on it. You pushed me into my own life almost forcefully. Do you know how rare that is? A partner who wants you to be bigger, not smaller? Over the following weeks, everything shifted. Victoria returned to her job reinvigorated, sometimes working late, but always seeming fully present. She started the novel she'd talked about for 3 years. She took solo trips every few months, never longer than a week, but enough to keep her feeling connected to herself.
And somewhere in the space we'd created, our marriage became something richer. The kind of partnership where two whole people were choosing each other, not two half people completing each other.
The first test came sooner than I expected. 2 weeks into my proposal, Victoria returned home with a flush on her cheeks and a light in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. "I did it," she announced, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. "I booked a trip." I was making dinner, deliberately domestic, deliberately present but not smothering. "Where?" "Italy. 10 days. Venice, Rome, Florence. I'm leaving in 3 weeks." She watched me carefully, testing for signs of disapproval. I didn't hesitate. "That sounds incredible. You'll love it." The relief that flooded her face should have been enough for me. It should have been, but underneath there was something else, a whisper of doubt that tried to tell me she was planning to leave me there, testing whether she actually wanted to stay. I pushed the doubt away and focused on making the evening special. After dinner, I drew a bath with lavender oil and left her alone with a glass of wine and her thoughts. When she emerged, her skin flushed and dewy, I made love to her slowly, almost reverently. I wanted her to feel treasured, wanted, chosen. Not because I was afraid of losing her, but because she deserved to feel that way. I touched her like I was mapping the country I was temporarily releasing her to explore. Afterward, she lay against my chest in the darkness, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin. "I feel like I'm going crazy," she admitted quietly. "Like I'm supposed to feel guilty, or like you're supposed to be secretly angry." "I'm not angry," I assured her. "What I am is curious. I want to know what happens when you let yourself be exactly who you want to be. What if who I want to be doesn't include you?" The question was barely a whisper, but it was the real one underneath everything. I was quiet for a long moment. The honest answer was that I was terrified of that possibility. But the true answer, the one that mattered, was different. "Then at least you'll know, and we can make our choice from a place of truth instead of fear or obligation." She didn't respond, but her grip on me tightened. Over the next 3 weeks, I kept my promise. When Victoria attended workshops and seminars, I didn't ask what they were about. When she spent an entire Saturday at a cafe writing, I didn't interrupt. When she video called Emma to say she'd changed her mind about their matching tattoos and instead was getting something entirely for herself, a phoenix in watercolor on her ribs, I sent her extra money so she could get the best artist in the city. And when I saw the new tattoo, barely healed and vivid with color, I kissed the sensitive skin around it and felt something shift inside me. This was who Victoria was when she wasn't negotiating her existence with someone else. She was bold. She was artistic. She was impossibly, breathtakingly herself. The night before her Italy trip, she surprised me. Instead of spending her last evening prepping or packing, she asked me to dress up and took me to the jazz bar downtown where we'd had our first date. She wore a deep emerald dress I'd never seen before, and her hair was styled differently, more voluminous, more intentional. "I wanted to remember why I chose you," she said over cocktails, her hand warm in mine across the tiny table. "Do you?" I asked, half joking, half terrified. "More than ever," she answered. And she kissed me there, in the crowded bar, in front of strangers who didn't matter because she was kissing me with her whole self, not fragments of herself she was rationing for safety.
6 months after Italy, I planned something. It wasn't grand, and it wasn't about reclaiming her or proving that she was ultimately mine. It was about celebrating what we'd built. I arranged it carefully. Victoria had mentioned wanting to renew our vows, not because our marriage was broken, but because the version we'd created was so different from the version we'd promised. It was bigger, braver, more honest. I didn't tell her. Instead, I coordinated with Emma to get her to the botanical garden on a Saturday afternoon under the guise of a casual hangout. When she arrived, she was wearing jeans and a simple white linen shirt, no makeup, her hair in a braid, utterly herself. And then she rounded the corner of the rose garden and saw me standing there in a simple suit, and beyond me, the 30 people we loved most, and she went absolutely still. Her hand flew to her mouth. "What is this?" she whispered, already moving toward me. "I wanted to do something," I began, taking her hands as our families and closest friends gathered around us. I wanted to stand in front of everyone we love and make new promises, not the ones we made 8 years ago when we were different people, promises for who we are now. I pulled a piece of paper from my jacket pocket, actual paper, not vows I'd memorized, because I wanted her to know I'd taken time and care with this. I promise, I read, my voice steady, to keep making space for you to be yourself, to celebrate your independence, not fear it, to love not the version of you that fits into my life, but the full, authentic, uncompromised version of you. I promise to remember that loving you doesn't mean owning you, that devotion doesn't require possession. I paused, looking at her face, which was streaming with tears. I promise, I continued, that even on the hard days, I'll choose the woman who needs her freedom more than she needs my certainty. And I promise to remember that that woman, that fierce, beautiful, alive woman, she chose me back. Victoria made a small, broken sound that was half laugh, half sob. I don't have vows, she managed, shaking her head. I didn't know. I'm not prepared. You don't have to be, I said. Just tell me what you feel. She was quiet for a moment, and then she stepped closer, her hands gripping my lapels. I feel like I've been living my entire adult life waiting to wake up to the person who would let me be myself. I thought that person would have to be me, alone. I thought freedom and partnership were mutually exclusive. But you proved they aren't. You proved that the deepest love is the kind that doesn't diminish anyone, that expands them. She placed her hand over my heart. I promised to never again apologize for wanting more experiences, more of myself, more of life. I promise to remember that your trust in my freedom is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. And I promise, she trailed off, smiling through tears, I promise that even though I now know I could be happy alone, I'm choosing actively, consciously, every single day to build this life with you. Not because I'm afraid of being alone, because being with you makes me braver. Then she kissed me, and when she pulled back, she was utterly speechless herself, just staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Later that evening, after the celebration and the cake and the toasts from friends, we drove home in comfortable silence. At a red light, she took my hand. She said, I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. What's that? When I told Emma I didn't want to remarry if we ever divorced, I was lying. Or maybe I wasn't lying exactly, but I was telling a half-truth. What I really meant was that I didn't want to marry someone who couldn't let me be free. And I think somewhere deep down, I was testing whether you could be that person. Did I pass? I asked, pulling her hand to my lips. She said, with flying colors. She said, you didn't just pass the test, you rewrote the whole framework of how I understood love. That night, we made love slowly and tenderly, without urgency or possession. Just two people who knew exactly how rare and precious it was to be completely, authentically themselves and still choose each other. When she fell asleep against my chest, I lay awake for a while, thinking about how close I'd come to making her my captive instead of my partner. The secret she'd been afraid to tell me had freed us both. And in the darkness of our bedroom, I smiled, grateful for the overheard conversation that had changed everything. Sometimes love isn't about holding tighter. Sometimes it's about having the courage to let go and the wisdom to know that the person who comes back fully and freely is the one worth keeping forever. The vow we'd made that day, surrounded by everyone we loved, wasn't about staying together despite our individuality. It was about staying together because of it. Because we'd finally learned that the truest intimacy wasn't possession, it was permission.